Let's bring in Warren Hogan on this substantial review. Warren, of course, economic advisor at Judo Bank and a regular on Sky News. Warren, thanks for your time. Let's start, first of all, with the fact the Treasurer has acted quite quickly, received the report, released it and agreed to, in principle, to the 51 recommendations.
Yeah, good afternoon, Kieran. I think it's excellent work from the Treasurer to get this out into the public domain quickly. It's good that all the recommendations are largely going to be supported by the government and hopefully the opposition. This reduces uncertainty, uncertainty for financial markets, for business, for the broader community. So I think they've done a great job in not sort of mucking around with this one, and I think that's a really good outcome.
So a thumbs up. Any surprises in the report? I know they're wanting to be much more transparent. That was the word the Treasurer used in the interview I did with him earlier. He says he wants these reforms to help, and obviously the review does, to make the central bank more transparent.
Yeah, look, I think it is transparency, but I think it's accountability, which of course transparency is part of that. But it's about making sure that those that are making the decisions are accountable for them. And what they're doing is bringing in some external support to the RBA through this new Monetary Policy Board. And most importantly, those new board members who will be responsible for setting interest rates will have to not only vote, they will also have to make public speeches. Hence, they'll be accountable. Everyone will know their position. I think their voting should be attributed. They're saying they're unattributed. I think we'll be playing a guessing game on that pretty soon after it all starts. But I think they've made some major steps here in the right direction. They've clarified the objectives, they've looked at the target, and I think this whole review will be largely welcomed by most economists out there in our community.
And so while the vote result of the decisions, whether they move, abstain or seek to keep rates as they are, they will be reported, but the names won't be attributed. You're saying they should be?
They definitely should be. There'll just be a guessing game about who says what. I mean, every word and action from central banks is picked over. And so if we're going to go down this route, we should be fully transparent and open about it. And I think one of the reasons maybe that they're worried about getting the right people out there and whether or not they want to be that exposed. But of course, that's going to be part of this new gig. And anyone who sticks their hand up to be on this board has to take that responsibility on and be prepared to be accountable for what they're saying. And of course, this is really difficult stuff because it's not that monetary policy is complex. It's not. It's just that you're dealing with an uncertain future and making judgments now about how that future will play out. And that's the really tricky part. And that will also determine the kind of people they have sitting on that board.
It is a specialised area, though. Who should be on the Monetary Policy Board?
Well, the committee has recommended that you have a macroeconomist, you have people with financial market expertise, labour market expertise, supply side of the economy. It's very open, but clearly they want experts. My contribution would be to say that they need experts with experience in analysing the economy and forecasting the economy. That is the tricky part of monetary policy, being able to make an assessment of the different paths the economy could take. So people with that experience, as opposed to academic economists or people who are in think tanks, that's fine. They can make a contribution through advisory committees and so forth, but the decision makers need to be people who are willing to take responsibility for their views and their votes and have that experience of forecasting and understanding the different ways the economy could play out in the future.
It's also stating very clearly that there should be equal weight given to the target, one target of full employment, the other being price stability, or i.e. inflation. Is that good to have that stated explicitly in those terms?
Yeah, look, this is part of the reform. The modernisation of the Reserve Bank Act is to clarify the objectives. We now clearly have both inflation and unemployment as stated will be the new objectives. This idea of the welfare of the Australian population over the long term is implied in those other two objectives anyway. But the reality is it's still going to be an inflation targeting central bank. They're going to stick to 2 to 3% inflation target, which I think is a missed opportunity. We have a higher inflation target than the rest of the world. The rest of the world forecasts 2%, and they had an opportunity to widen the band to 1 to 3% and didn't, to bring us in line with international standards. And I still haven't seen a satisfactory explanation for why we should be targeting higher inflation than the rest of the world. But that's at the margin, and we have this very clear objective of inflation and also maintaining as low unemployment rate as possible. And in the review, they did state that the Reserve Bank needs to be more explicit about what they think full employment is. And that's a very tricky thing to estimate at any point in time, but that's clearly one of the new objectives that they're going to be given.
Do you think that the focus on the labour market, with the Treasurer appointing 2 new members of the RBA, one of them Ian Ross, a former president of the Fair Work Commission, he clearly, the Treasurer said that he wants a bigger focus on ordinary working people and the implications for them. Is that fair enough as part of a broader board?
Well, I think part of definitely the governance board, I think that's a very good perspective. I think that makes sense from this government to bring someone in like that. Whether or not that someone like Ian Ross is the right person to stick onto the new monetary policy board when it comes into our operation next July, I presume is when they're going to start, is another question, because these are specialist skills, and the question will be, does Mr. Ross have that expertise in understanding the broad economy rather than, the labour market specifics and the wage setting processes and so forth? So that'll be an interesting test case, because they are saying that some existing board members will go onto the Monetary Policy Board and some may go onto the Governance Board.
So overall, you give it the tick though. There's some reservations clearly in terms of accountability, but overall, as a step forward for the RBA, you give this the tick?
I give it a very big tick. It's an excellent set of recommendations. I'm very impressed with the government for putting them through so quickly. And I think this is a modernisation of the Reserve Bank. I don't think anyone should get away from the fact that this is a big change for how our central bank operates. But we've got 18 months to get those new operational procedures in place, and it's bringing us into line with best practice. And now the big question is who fills the different roles, and getting the right people into the right seats. That's going to be critical from here.
And Warren, you'll be joining us on Budget Day with Andrew Clennell, Ross Greenwood, myself here, and the rest of our team, Laura Jays, as well, for Budget Day. I spoke to the Treasurer about that as well and asked him, now that it's just a couple of weeks away, just over, is it finalised? He said it's not finalised yet. Is it going to be cautious or ambitious? He said it's going to be responsible.
Yeah.
What do you want to see out of it?
Well, I mean, look, we still have an inflation problem, and this cost of living issue, this inflation issue, is what is hurting everyday Australians. And I would like to see the government do more. I don't think they'll do a material cutting back in spending or budget repair in the short term, but they're clearly not going to make matters worse. But I would like to see them tighten up a little bit more. I think we continue to underestimate this inflation and the damage it's doing to Australians. And of course, the potential for interest rates to continue to have to go up. I think there's every chance the Reserve Bank's going to hike in May, and we'll have to go again through the second half of the year. And the government needs to be playing more of a role, state and federal, in taking some heat out of this economy.
Warren Hogan, Economic Advisor at Judo Bank. We'll see you soon, certainly before the budget on May 9, but you'll be involved in that as well. So thanks, Warren. Talk to you soon.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kieran.